Hello, chitlins. It's your weird Uncle John again. So I had an email come through that is an interesting question, and I didn't realize I was going to have an interesting answer. But I thought that, I thought that it was something worth sharing with a larger audience. So, other than the audience that Quora has. Okay, so the question is this. What is it like to have your worldview completely disproven? My knee-jerk response was, which time? So I'll tell you, I just read verbatim what I responded, and we can go from there. What is it like to have your worldview completely disproven? Which time? LOL. Let me use some Socratic method. What's it like to have a worldview that is counterpoint to society's zeitgeist? Someone had to first declare the solar system heliocentric. Galileo tried and was censured and put on house arrest by the Vatican for a decade until he died. A spherical Earth, women's rights, the 3/5 compromise, discovery of bacteria, Homo Denisovan. It's all taken for granted now, but people were killed professionally and literally during this process of discovery. We're in the midst of that right now with the whole UFO, UAP, AATIP or ATIP disclosures. Peeling back the layers of reality, where each has been carefully engineered over decades, is an uncommon practice among many. My philosophy is to ask che bene, or who benefits. With that catalyst, when you encounter an answer, you realize the answer is not the truth with a capital T, but it's an artificial truth that's used to support yet another layer of engineered reality. Adults use Santa or Krampus or Jesus or report cards to successfully manipulate behavior of their children because adults know better, supposedly. At some point, that reality is peeled back, and another system of control and manipulation, aka reality, is awaiting your arrival and conscripted participation. That is the gravitas of those who seek truth. Like Shakespeare said, where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise. Speaking truth to power has not gone well for a lot of people, or speaking truth to society for that matter. It can result in being ridiculed, being ostracized, and even crucified. Pretty sure Jesus' Yelp review of Earth would be 1 star. And this is why we should probably license access to the internet for some folks. Oh. How can I say? I'm a rebel-rousing Scorpio, even at this stage of the game and this late in the game, I guess, maybe. But it brought out a whole milieu of things to cuss and discuss and use as mental chew toys. But the more I thought about it, it's like that indoctrination starts really, really young, and it happens in such an innocent fashion, you know. Because when you think about Santa's pretty friggin' creepy. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. It's like, dude, get a restraining order, you know? But this whole sense of an omnipotent, maybe benevolent God watching out, or maybe not watching out so much as just watching you and keeping a record of what you're doing. That sound familiar to anybody? It's like submitting your taxes and your IRS comes back and says, no, you owe this much. You already know. You're setting us up for failure, you know? So the engineered, it's almost like engineering choice. And again, if you're a parent, you've already done this, maybe consciously or not. Telling a willful child what to do does not usually go over well or smoothly. But giving a child the illusion of choice, then they have a impression of empowerment, and that choice usually goes a little smoother. And so, you know, here we have this indoctrination of something as simple as Santa Claus. Some omnipresent being in the background, keeping an eye on you, keeping tabs in a journal. 200 years ago, it was God. 100 years ago, God, maybe a little bit of the government. And now it's the world in and of itself. How many houses have a Ring camera? How many light poles and stoplights have traffic cameras? How many stores have cameras? How many people have cameras? If you think we are not in a state of being where freedom is no longer available to us, then you're not paying attention. My 2 cents. And I think that's where I want to kind of draw a parallel between UFOs / Project Blue Book / ATIP, in the sense that when you are young and you don't have a framework like religion to give you a sense of good or bad, and you don't want to be the heavy, you know, why? My mom, my dad are all the time coming down on me, blah, blah, blah. Well, sometimes you need to lighten that load in the sense of obligation or responsibility of the parent. God says you need to do this. Society says you need to do this. This is part of our particular society's zeitgeist, and that's what we need to do. When you're 3 or 4 years old, you can't use those words. So we create a metaphor. We create this fictional character, and this fictional character has a set of expectations. And if we follow those expectations, we get rewarded. And if we don't follow those expectations, we don't get rewarded. And, you know, it's a system that starts out fairly benign and cutesy with Santa. And then it gets potentially hazardous if you choose not to follow your particular religion, your familial expectations, society's expectations based upon gender or society or job title. If someone were to go from being I'm sure this will get some interesting feedback. Let's say you go from being a dancer to being a stripper to being an OnlyFans person. you can have one set of like expectations based upon society. However, this person was a minister and did the very same thing, or this person was a pediatrician or a nurse or a vice president. All of these things could be construed in different ways just because of the circumstances. And I think this is kind of endemic of a lot of things, where it starts out fairly benign and is a kind of way of gently teaching you how to behave in society. But over time, it becomes progressively more ubiquitous in society, and the punishment for not complying with society is that ostracization and abandonment. And some people, God bless them, some people are capable of getting the shit back in the horse. And, once they have this aha moment or this epiphany, satori, awareness, whatever, but they're able to then go back into that previous mode of being, mad props, because I can't do it. I've tried. It's like putting on a shoe. It's like putting on if you have a size 14 foot and putting on a size 12 shoe. You might be able to cram it back in there, but my God, is it going to hurt? You're going to be uncomfortable as shit, and you're finally get to a point where you're just like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm going to do exactly what I want to do because this is what I know to be true. It doesn't mean you're right, but it's what you know to be true. And that's where I think we come into a lot of confusion between what is right and what is true. All you got to do is be a minority in this country and understand that difference. As a nurse, there were times where, I may have a patient who I know they need to be in a hospital a couple more days to be stabilized. And this is where I think the science and the art of healthcare, or at least nursing, I'll speak from my own experiences. Sometimes a person just needs a few extra days, and the hospital system and the healthcare system is screwed. So you manipulate the system in order to get a desired result. If someone has a potential for diabetes, and diabetes leads to increased risk for infection, and someone was just, had a surgery, you may or may not want to do a blood sugar test on them right after they ate, as opposed to waiting for 2 hours. Oh, elevated blood sugar. Oh, risk for infection. Oh, why don't we keep you in for a couple more days? I think we all have situations where we have to challenge the status quo, challenge the rules of the road, as it were, to make sure this person doesn't end up in a ditch. And that's also a slippery slope, because you don't really... If everybody chooses to break the rules because they think they know better, it's anarchy. So then you need to find that person who is both smart and wise enough to break the rules for a greater good. I think that's where we are right now in society in general, is that we have groups of people who think they know better. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. You could use Krampus as an example of manipulating a child's behavior as opposed to Santa Claus. The outcome may be similar, however the long-term damage may be different. Your mileage may vary. But that's something that, once I wrote this email and then, had to run some errands, when I'm out driving around, I'm percolating. And that's something I felt like was something worth exploring and putting out there and see what comes back. At what point do we realize that the mythology no longer serves us? At what point do we reveal the secret? Again, we'll go back to the Santa Claus metaphor. You get all the adults in the room who kind of a wink and a nod, oh, Santa's watching, you never know. Santa can be anywhere. And it's a white lie, I guess, in the sense that it doesn't, it's not really hurting anybody, but it could. And I can see where people may think they're right. I can see where people see through their own BS, but want to retain the power or retain the myth, or they've got some sort of financial, emotional skin in the game. But I think there's going to be a series of discoveries this year, and ATIP may be one of them. The January 6th Commission, some of the legal issues that are being brought for the orange one outside of his presidency. I think they're all examples of peeling back reality and finding something closer to the core, something closer to the truth of the capital T. And I think if you watch ATIP, I think if you watch the discussions where Liz Cheney is involved, and I also think news articles having to do with Antarctica, I think this year there's going to be, I think we're going to peel back the layer that is Santa and find another layer. But that's the interesting thing about these layers and this discernment, is that you get closer to the truth. Every time you get just a little bit closer, and they start to, if you peel back enough layers, you start to see the threads that connect them. And kind of like psychological archaeology, you keep peeling back the strata, and if you peel back 4 or 5 layers, you see the evolution. Of course, unless if you're looking at megalithic structures, then you see these really awesome things, and then it looks like a bunch of cobblers came in and followed behind them. But that's another story entirely. So now that I've kvetched about society in general, the metaphysical why. Why is this happening? I think that in order to have an interesting story, you have to have some curves. A hero is measured by his battles, not by their victories. I mean, Hercules to Wonder Woman to Batman, whatever. I mean, if you're taking a lollipop from a child, I mean, so what? But if it's true Clash of the Titans, even if you lose, still the fact that you engaged in battle with that thing, whatever that animosity thing, or whatever that antagonist is. Sometimes the antagonist comes with some street cred, and so, that's why we have, these, in boxing, you have the main event versus the undercards. I think that we need to have that kind of Sherman drawing. We need to have that tension in order to have a good story. But I also think that you need to have a counterpoint so that you can fully understand the expression. So we'll be specific. Be specific, John. Be specific. In a pre-corporeal self, before you stepped into a meat suit, you talked with Julie, your cruise director, and said, hey, I want to go to Earth and I want to learn A, B, and C. Well, in order to learn A, B, and C, you have to have the right set and actors and staging and lighting cues, and because it's all a show. It's all just a big show. But in order to have the experience of being a winner, you have to have an adversary. In order to have the experience of being a loser, you need to have an adversary. To be able to win and lose enough times before you realize that there really is no winning and losing. It's either you're in a state of learning, or you're in a state of preparation, or you're in a state of rest. Then that's when the light bulb, maybe the light bulb doesn't go on, maybe the dimmer switch gets bumped up a bit, and you start to have the aha experience. But in order for you to do that, you have to have that foil, you have to have that adversary, you have to have that tension in order to create that. And so people say, why is there pain and suffering? Well, because it's a damn good teacher and everyone understands it. Why do people die tragic deaths? Because tragedy has lessons. Why anything? There's a lesson therein. And sometimes you need to step outside your human mind to see that. It's like, I wrote an article a long time ago about Archangel Trevor. And Trevor agreed to help God out with a larger plan to bring humanity into alignment and to, en masse, elevate everybody. But to do so, we would need a world war. And in order to have a world war, we need to have a really, really strong antagonist. And so this isn't something that a human soul would be able to bear. This is something that an elevated soul like an archangel would be able to bear. So then God's out trolling around looking for someone to take this sucker punch. And so, he goes into the locker room where all the archangels are hanging out, and says, hey, I got this plan. Well, what's the plan? Well, I want to bring humanity in alignment and elevate them en masse. And the way we're going to do that is to have a world war, but I need someone to be that triggering event, and that someone's going to be called Adolf Hitler. The problem with that is that there's going to be such an energetic negative load for decades over the words and sound frequency that equate to Adolf Hitler. It's going to be a problem, and you're going to have to bear that load. Or at least that echo. So who wants to step up to the plate and take one for the team? And so Trevor's like, yeah, I'll do that. And so God kind of pulls him aside, thanks for volunteering. But by the way, again, just want to reiterate, you're going to be reviled for pretty much the rest of human history until the GOP decides to, reword that and call it, Sorry, sidebar. Um, the reason why Earth is as hard and as duplicitous as it is so that those simple things that we learned in other existences or in earlier incarnations can really be put to the test. And to have things like duplicity come up and really get you twisted up in knots, and then see if you can untie yourself. That's why I think places like Earth need to exist. And again, the other metaphor of this, just the amusement park. You come into Earth, there are so many things you can participate in. You know, religion, jobs, family, society, laws, whatever. But it's just an amusement park. And it's just, you pick the ride you want to ride. And you ride it for as long as you want to ride it. For the longest time, I was very upset about a social dynamic in the world. And so I threw a lot of energy into that. And again, it was good to have those challenges and to have those battles, because they harden you up. They strengthen you, because sometimes harden can have a negative connotation. They strengthen you and they prepare you for future battles, and so that makes them necessary. But you also don't need to live there. I had to turn off life support on both of my parents, and that was pretty painful. But at the same time, after I got through the initial shock and trauma of it, then it was like, well, why did this meat suit choose to have this lesson at this time? And when I could reframe that horror as honor, then I realized that, wow, what an amazing gift that was that they gave to me. What an amazing experience I had in order to strengthen myself in ways that other people may never ever experience. And so that just adds to the patina / scars that are me, and that will be incorporated into this chapter of this meat suit, and it will be shared throughout the rest of my iterations. And when you think of it from that, it's like, how freaking awesome is that? Then you realize what an amazing place Earth is, in the sense that, again, another metaphor, maybe it's like the Star Trek holodeck. Whatever you want to imagine, you can manifest. Some things are easier than others to manifest, but all the different varieties and all the different things that you can participate in, they're lessons. There's no right or wrong. It's just lessons. Some lessons are easier to deal with than others, but it comes back to one of those larger questions: is why is there suffering? Because it's an excellent teacher, and regardless of your gender, race, creed, color, orientation, pain and suffering translates well. Unfortunately, again, depend on your experience. But anyway, so that's what I'll leave y'all today, is that if you're ever wondering why life is hard, it's because it's supposed to be, because it teaches you. And if you're having some really challenging situations, realize that it's because you're a hero. And heroes have got to have good battles, because win or lose, you come out the other side stronger and wiser. So here's to being stronger and wiser. Take care, Jetlins. Bye.